Have you ever wondered why your mind feels louder than the world around you even when everything is quiet? Ethan Cole was sitting alone in his small apartment. Just after 9 p.m. the city outside had slowed to a distant hum, but inside his head the noise never stopped. Every conversation replayed, every mistake stretched into something bigger, every small worry turned into a storm he could not turn off. He stared at the ceiling trying to rest, but his thoughts kept pulling him back like waves that refused to settle. He thought about what people said to him earlier that day, what he should have said, what he might say tomorrow. His mind kept jumping from past to future, never staying where he was even for a second. It felt like carrying something heavy that no one else could see, and the longer he held it, the heavier it became. He tried distractions, scrolling his phone, pacing the room, pouring a glass of water, but nothing worked. The silence around him only made the chaos inside more obvious, and in that moment Ethan realized something unsettling. The world outside was not the source of his exhaustion, it was his own mind that refused to let him rest, and he had no idea how to escape it. The next morning Ethan walked through the city streets with heavy eyes and an even heavier mind. The sound of car horns, distant conversations, and footsteps blended into a dull background noise, yet inside him everything felt sharp and overwhelming. Every small detail pulled his attention, and every passing thought demanded to be solved. He tried to focus on simple things like the rhythm of his steps or the cool morning air, but his mind kept dragging him back into loops of worry and memory, as if it refused to let go. He stopped at a crosswalk and watched people moving around him. Each person seemed calm, focused, present, while he felt trapped inside his own head. He wondered how something invisible could control him so completely, how thoughts with no weight could feel heavier than anything he had ever carried. By the time he reached a quiet park near the edge of the city, he felt exhausted. Even though his day had barely begun, he sat on a wooden bench staring at the ground, trying once again to silence the noise, but the harder he tried, the louder it became. It was in that moment when he was no longer trying to fix anything that he noticed someone sitting a few feet away, an old man, still and relaxed, looking out over a narrow river, as if nothing in the world could disturb him. There was something different about him, something steady, something unmoved. And without fully understanding why, Ethan felt drawn toward that calm, as if it held an answer he had been searching for. Without knowing, for a while Ethan just sat there, pretending not to notice the old man, but his eyes kept drifting back. The man did not move much. He did not check a phone or look around restlessly. He simply sat and watched the river, as if that alone was enough. After a few minutes, Ethan could not hold it in any longer. He spoke quietly, almost embarrassed. "How can you just sit there like that?" he asked. "My mind never stops. I cannot even enjoy a moment of silence." The old man turned his head slightly, his expression calm and gentle, like someone who had heard this question many times before. He did not answer right away. Instead, he looked back at the river and said, "Tell me, what do you see?" Ethan followed his gaze. Leaves floating along the surface, some moved smoothly with the current, others got caught near the edge, spinning for a while before drifting free again. The water kept flowing no matter what happened to the leaves. They never stopped it. The old man nodded slowly and asked another question. "Are the leaves disturbing the river, or is the river allowing them to pass?" Ethan frowned, slightly unsure of what that meant. He opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out. The question lingered in his mind, not as noise, but as something different, something quieter. And for the first time that day, Ethan was not trying to solve his thoughts. He was simply watching them. The old man picked up a small twig from the ground and gently placed it into the river. They both watched as it touched the surface. For a moment it spun in place, caught in a small swirl of water before slowly drifting away with the current. "You see," he said softly, "the river does not fight what enters it. It does not try to hold or reject it. It simply allows and continues to flow." Ethan kept his eyes on the twig as it moved farther and farther away, disappearing around a bend. The old man continued, "Your thoughts are no different. They come, they stay for a moment, and then they leave. But you," he paused and looked at Ethan, "you keep reaching into the water, trying to grab them, trying to stop them. And in doing so, you disturb your own peace." Ethan felt something shift inside him. He remembered all the times he held on to a single thought, replaying it again and again, as if it demanded his attention, as if letting it go meant losing control. But now, watching the river, he began to question that belief. What if the problem was never the thoughts themselves, but his need to control where they went and how long they stayed? The old man leaned slightly closer, his voice calm but firm, as if placing each word carefully into the air. "You believe that holding on gives you control," he said, "but look again at the river. The tighter Something tries to resist the current the longer it suffers. Ethan watched as another leaf became trapped near a small rock, spinning endlessly in the same place. It did not move forward, it did not disappear, it simply stayed, caught repeating the same motion over and over, just like his thoughts. The old man continued, when you hold on to a thought, you give it weight, you give it time, you give it power. But when you let it pass, it loses all three. Ethan felt a quiet discomfort, not from the world, but from realizing how much of his own struggle he had been creating. Every replay, every worry, every attempt to fix what was already gone had kept him stuck like that leaf. And for the first time, he did not try to argue with the idea. He simply sat there watching the river and wondering what would happen if he stopped reaching into it altogether for a moment. Ethan did nothing. He did not try to change his thoughts. He did not try to silence them. He simply sat there and watched, just as he had watched the river. At first it felt strange, almost uncomfortable. His mind still produced the same noise, the same memories, the same worries, but something was different. He was no longer chasing them. He noticed a thought appear about something he regretted, and instead of holding on to it, he let it stay. Without reacting, slowly it faded. Then another thought came about the future, what could go wrong, what he might fail at. And again, he did nothing. He just watched, like watching a leaf drift by, without stepping into the water. Minutes passed, and for the first time in a long while the space between his thoughts began to grow. It was not that his mind became empty, it was that he was no longer inside every thought, he was simply aware of them. The old man spoke quietly, you see, the river has not changed, but your relationship with it has. Ethan took a slow breath, feeling something he had not felt in a long time, not silence, but a sense of distance from the noise. And in that small space, he felt a hint of peace beginning to emerge. The old man slowly stood up, brushing the dust from his hands, and without looking back at Ethan, he began to walk along the river path, his steps unhurried, as if he had nowhere else to be. Ethan remained seated, watching the water, but something inside him had already begun to shift. The noise in his mind still appeared from time to time, but it no longer pulled him in the same way. It felt lighter, less demanding, like distant echoes instead of commands. He looked up and noticed the old man had almost disappeared around the bend, and for a brief moment Ethan felt the urge to call out, to ask more questions, to hold on to this source of calm. But then he paused, remembering the river, remembering the leaves. He let the moment pass, just like the thoughts, and as he sat there alone, he realized something quietly powerful. The peace he felt did not come from the old man, it did not come from the river, it had always been there, hidden beneath the constant effort to control what could never be controlled. And for the first time, Ethan did not feel the need to chase anything, not even peace itself. Later that day, Ethan walked back into the city, the same streets, the same noise, the same people. Nothing outside had changed. Cars still rushed by, voices still overlapped, and the world still moved with the same restless energy. But something inside him was different. When a thought appeared, he noticed it. When a worry tried to pull him, and he felt it, but instead of following it, he allowed it to pass like a leaf on water. He stood at another crosswalk, just as he had that morning, but this time, he did not feel trapped inside his mind. He heard the sounds around him without resistance. He felt the air without distraction, and for the first time in a long while, he was exactly where he was, not lost in the past, not chasing the future, just present. A thought came telling him to worry about tomorrow, and he almost smiled, because now he could see it clearly, not as truth, but as something passing through. And as he continued walking, Ethan realized that peace was never about escaping the chaos, it was about no longer being controlled by it. That night, Ethan sat once again in his apartment, the same room, the same quiet walls, but this time the silence did not feel heavy. He placed a glass of water on the table and simply watched it, not trying to escape his thoughts, not trying to control them. They came, as they always did, small worries, unfinished conversations, distant fears. But now they moved through him, without resistance, like the river he had seen earlier. He realized something simple, yet profound. The chaos had never truly been the problem, it was his attachment to every passing thought that created the storm. And as he sat there, breathing slowly, he understood that peace was not something you find somewhere else, it is something that appears when you stop holding on. The world outside will always move fast, people will always speak, life will always be uncertain. But the one thing you can choose is whether you follow every thought or let it pass. And as Ethan closed his eyes, he felt a quiet clarity settle within him, not forced, not chased, just there, like it had always been waiting.